after 9/11 started and you were all in theater, there were people that you came across that had an impact on your life, obviously changed it for the better. What could you say in general, before we get into their individual stories, about, you know, some of the people that you looked up to? I mean, how did they change the way you lived life or did your job?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things you don't really think about it at the time because you're so focused on the job and working together. But in retrospect, you know, you definitely start thinking about it and you realize who had a big impact on your life and a big influence on how you go about doing things. You know, when you're serving in a special operations community or really in the Army at all, you have an experience in war that's difficult to describe to people on the outside. You're young men fighting together, working together, sometimes dying together, unfortunately. And it's an experience that completely separates you from the rest of society. It makes it very difficult to relate back to people and to communicate with people about some of these things. And it's a very strong experience. It's a powerful experience that you have, that you reflect on. It makes you who you are, and you can't put it behind you. It's a part of who you are. And these people who crossed in and out of your lives, it has such a big impact on how you approach things, how you think about things, how you perceive things. It puts certain filters on the way you perceive, you know, the world around you, and it'll stay with you forever.
Did you find that after you spent time in the service, and a lot of your childhood friends or friends that you had when you were in high school, you almost went back and couldn't relate to anymore?
Yeah, no,
because of the
I
experiences
don't.
you had?
I'm not really in touch with or hang out with anybody from, you know, my previous life prior to joining the military. And I find that the friends I make now, you know, now that I'm a veteran, I'm out of the service and going to college, that all my friends are veterans. All the new friends I make are veterans who served. It's not that I have any prejudice against civilians or young kids going to school. They're great people, great Americans even. But it's just we're kind of on different wavelengths.
I think the weird thing for me, like Jack said, you know, making all these friends in the military is watching, you know, we've all lost so many friends since 9/11, and watching friend after friend go away, it's a strange feeling that only somebody who's 80, 90 years old must experience when all their friends start dying. It's just a really bizarre feeling to be relatively young and experience that. And, you know, opposite Jack, I'm out trying to make friends outside of the military that I know, you know. But at the same time, I recognize that all these guys died doing what they loved, and they lived life like in that. And even my friends outside to this day, I mean, they're crazy pilots, and, you know, these guys are living life, and that's just the kind of people I like to surround myself with. But it's just a very strange feeling to have your friends die and at such a young age. And recently, you know, I lost my best friend Glenn Doherty in Benghazi, Libya. It's tough, you know, and to sit there and trying to explain that to my own children was probably the toughest part. You know, having a conversation with my 10-year-old who knew Uncle Glenn very well. But it's just a very weird feeling. I don't know if you guys
I think that, I mean, recently someone asked me what the biggest thing you took away from being overseas, and I think the one thing that, you know, because all of us are, when you're invincible. You know, you're 19, 20 years old. They're telling you are the high. You know, you're so trained, and you go through all these schools and all that. And then I think what happens is that when you start losing friends, all of a sudden you realize that there's only a couple things that are really truly important in life. You know, it's your family and your friends, and that's it. I mean, you know, let's face it, we all like nice things, but monetary things just basically lose value. I mean, you kind of get your arms around that true. Realizing life is short and life is fragile, and you know, and I think you just really kind of refocus your life around the real things.
I think it puts things into perspective. I was on a plane the other day, and we were delayed getting out of San Francisco. The ground crew forgot to give the numbers, the weight and balance information to the flight the incoming flight crew that went, and they went home. So we literally had to taxi back all the way to the gate to get to weigh all the bags again. And people were just losing their minds in the airplane. And I'm sitting there going, this is ridiculous. You know, like it happened.
Who cares?
And who cares? It's like you're
Yeah.
not getting shot at.
Right.
You know, it's like your life isn't on the line. It really puts things in perspective like that. And I just look at these people complaining about losing a couple hours, and
Yep.
you know, it's just there's so much more that is important in life.
You know, something after listening to you guys talk, things that comes to mind is, I agree with Jack in that we're not prejudiced about, you know, friends that we had in high school, and that we're ignoring them. They're still always going to be our friends. Really what it comes down to, and the thought that came to mind is, in this community, or in the military in general, when you go out and you know that the person in front of you, the person behind you, the person to your left, and the person to your right has your back, as we say. And they know for sure that you have theirs. It's a bond that over time develops that you can't break. And it's a bond that, you know, don't get me wrong, I love my family, and everybody loves their family, but it's different. These are my brothers. We may not have worked together, but we're from the same, you know, piece of wool that came off the sheep, which made the piece of linen. We all came from that mold, and so we're all part of one another, and that's a bond that will never go away, and we share that. And so it's not that we don't accept outsiders in our life, because I do the same thing. I try to accept people into our lives from different communities, but just have a different viewpoint, and try to keep that viewpoint amongst the people that I know really well.
One of my old mentors was Nick Jeans. He was an old AVSOC CCT guy, and he was like, look, we're all cut from the same cloth, like Dan said. It really is true, you know, and once you get out of the military and into civilian life, I think that was something that showed up to me real quickly. It's like, I'm not, you know, sure, the SEAL community is great, we've got our thing, but we are the broader spectrum, you know, all of SOCOM and all of the special operations guys. I mean, whether even the coalition, you know, we work with the different coalition units, the Polish, the English, the Australians, the Canadians, you know,
you
all
can pick
the
them out in a room full
German.
of people. You can look at them and say, that guy was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. It's usually the drunk guy in the corner.
I mean, you can even look at him and be like, I know that guy. He was Special Forces. That was a group guy.
Yeah.
You just know.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, you know, talking about that kind of that one team thing is, that's the one thing I did like about contracting, because our team was about 99% former special ops guys, and it was really cool to get all those different soft guys together in same mission, and kind of you learn from everyone, and you realize, I mean, we had every walk of life, and it was wild, and you know, you always had that little bit of rivalry, and everyone's got their, you know, the SEAL personality and the SF personality, and you know, but everyone kind of comes together, and it was really cool to really work that closely with everyone as a whole.
I think anybody who worked in the special operations community long enough in this war definitely had those key moments when you realize this is huge. This is something that it's basically historically unprecedented. It's never really happened before. All these guys working together in these task forces, and a lot of the details, of course, are still things we can't really talk about. But I think everybody who worked the job long enough had that moment where you said, wow, there's nothing else like this before, and probably won't be for a while.
Yeah.
And do you guys all feel like that common thread goes throughout the generations? I mean, if you meet somebody who, say, is a Vietnam veteran, or you just know that that's the same kind of community.
Yeah. No, I see that directly. Our experiences are related to the background and what was accomplished by the special operations community. It wasn't even the special operations community in the Vietnam War.
Right.
It was, you know, Force Recon, SEALs were up and coming. There was LRPs, who later were reclassed as Ranger companies. Special Forces really came into its own during the Vietnam War. and we definitely stood on their shoulders. And I mean, those guys, they're our spiritual grandfathers, if not our literal grandfathers.
I think it's a big difference between Vietnam and this war. You know, call it a war on terror, whatever we call it these days. But the support of the American population is just, that's something that I've felt good about. You know, coming home and really being appreciated for the service and going over to, you know, 5 deployments to Middle East and Afghanistan, which I feel terrible thinking about how those guys from Vietnam must have felt.
Yeah.
And today it's an all volunteer force. Back then, these guys didn't even have a choice. You know, they're going over there, drafted, no choice in the matter, serve their country and come back, and it's a completely different experience. And it's, again, back to that unification that happened after 9/11, which is an amazing thing to see happen. And even with overseas and in Europe and these other countries that live the same and enjoy the same types of freedoms that we do in the United States, I think they felt a strong bond towards us because their own freedom, they saw their own, if that can happen to the United States, it can happen to our way of life as well. So,
And in many cases, they understood because it has happened
yeah,
Right.
in the bounds of
Yeah.
their own country, which I
Yeah.
think probably, you know, made them more empathetic.
Yeah.
The one thing on your note is, I don't know how you guys feel, but it's almost, I mean, I've been thanked a lot. And it's a weird feeling. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong, but it's a very odd feeling when a stranger or someone that you know in a normal life all of a sudden, you know, on different days says, I really appreciate what you've done for this country. And you're thinking, to me, I'm like, what did I do? Like, I look around and, you know, guys that we're going to talk about, I mean, that's to me who, and I just think I'm this little thing, like, and I don't know, it's kind of an odd feeling, almost uncomfortable, where you're like, you
No,
don't thank me.
in the big picture, you realize, you know, you're proud to have played your part, but
Yes.
it really was a micro. We each played a little microscopic part in that big picture, and you know, like the Ranger Creed says, 100% and then some, and maybe we gave 100%, but there were a lot of guys who gave more than 100%.